What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Week 9 NFL Power Rankings. Just a few bits of housekeeping before we jump in here. A lot of you know I have been playing in the Stick to Football podcast listener league with the Seattle Seahawks, and we have actually made it to the Super Bowl. The number one defense in football, but in the NFC Championship, Russell Wilson and the leading sack artist in the NFL, Frank Clark, goes down. So we're going to have our hands full with the Bengals in the Super Bowl. I believe someone is going to live commentate that game. You can catch that on my Twitch. That's twitch.tv/ThatFranchiseGuy tomorrow night, Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And then a couple quick things. Because I love you guys and sleep is overrated, I am setting a goal to upload 6 days a week, every day of the week that isn't NFL Sunday, because why not? And then also a little teaser here. I am going to be getting into podcasting territory. It's going to be a bit of a learn as we go experience with you guys, but I think thanks to the support from you guys, I'm ready to start up a podcast, so I'm excited for that. So enough notes. Let's get into the power rankings, what you guys have been waiting for. These things are really taking shape. We're seeing less movement every week, and that's something I'm pretty proud of. You know, when the power rankings hold up and my weekly picks go 15-0. I'm not just out here rambling. What I'm saying is actually holding up on Sundays, so that's good to see. Obviously want to keep that up. We do have some movement this week regardless, even if it is less than normal. So starting at 32, the Oakland Raiders are going to stay at the bottom. They actually played pretty well in this one against the Colts, just didn't have enough firepower to keep up with Andrew Luck in the end. Raiders now battling the 49ers here, who come in at 31st still for that number one overall pick. The top two prospects in this class might be heading to the Bay Area, or at least to Oakland for a year before they go to Vegas. Both these teams probably have their quarterbacks, so we'll probably be looking at Nick Bosa and Ed Oliver, would be my guess, headed west. And then number 30 here, the Buffalo Bills. They actually played very competitive against New England. I stayed away from the spread in that game because, Buffalo at home, they really can kind of upset anyone. It's just a crazy environment. They do this year after year, no matter how good or how bad they are. They play so well at home. Now they just got overwhelmed by the end of the game by Tom Brady and just a much more talented offense. But, the Bills are just kind of having a throwaway year. If they can kind of maintain this solid defense, head into next year and load up on offensive weapons and maybe get Josh Allen a little more of an opportunity to exist in the NFL, then I don't think they'll necessarily be irrelevant next year. They could certainly be a playoff team in the AFC. I think they've got a pretty good coach as well. And then number 29, the Arizona Cardinals staying put. We basically called this a coin toss between them and the 49ers, and that's pretty much what happened. The Cardinals score late. Good to see Larry Fitzgerald, a little celebration at the end with the 2-point conversion. He's had a really disappointing year. He's kind of on his way out. Pretty meaningless win here for the Cardinals, but always good with the young quarterback, I suppose, to get a little momentum and confidence. And then 28, still no movement here. The New York Giants, just abysmal on offense yet again. There's really nothing else to say about the Giants. They seem to play in a lot of close games. They've got playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. The defense is just kind of existent, whatever. But Eli Manning and this offensive line, it's just a problem, simply put. And they're going to keep losing because they can't score on offense. And then number 27, the Cleveland Browns. Now, they played a pretty tough game against Pittsburgh. The defense really showed up on Sunday. But Baker Mayfield and this offense, it's not really Baker Mayfield's fault, if you ask me. He hasn't been great by any means, but it's kind of like the Jared Goff rookie year type of thing. Jarvis Landry's not a number one receiver, and outside of him, they have nobody. I mean, David Njoku is crazy inconsistent. The offensive line hasn't been that good. He does have a really good running game, and Nick Chubb actually really impressed me in this game, and he's got a good defense on the other side, but I'm taking a wait-and-see approach at this point with Baker. They fire Hugh Jackson this week. And Todd Haley, I don't know what that's really going to accomplish. I think when you're trying to develop a young quarterback, it's important to kind of have some consistency, and this is really just going to stir the pot. Maybe it works out. Obviously, in the future, you had to replace Hugh Jackson. It was definitely heading that way, but At this point, I don't know if that was the right call or not. And then at 26, our first bit of movement this week, the Miami Dolphins are going to drop a spot. Now, I think this team is very well coached. I think Adam Gase is a very under-the-radar coach. This defense can do some nice things, although they did not this week. The one comment I will have is Xavier Howard is getting a lot of hype as this top 10 lockdown corner. I don't see it. I think he's a really solid player, but he's been incredibly inconsistent this year. He was good in the first half against DeAndre Hopkins. He has that huge game against Brandon Cooks and the Patriots last year in prime time. But, from a consistency standpoint, I don't think he's anywhere near the top 10. I think it's a lot of that's just people looking for pieces of optimism on this Dolphins team that has really dropped off in public opinion in terms of, starting undefeated for the first few weeks and now just returning to the bottom of the NFL. Now, I would think they're going to get Ryan Tannehill back at some point here. That should spark them some things, but this team just has a lack of overall talent on both sides of the ball, elite playmakers, So then we've got the Tampa Bay Bucs moving up a spot. Fitzmagic comes storming back in this one. I mean, this game was over. Like, the Bengals had a double-digit lead. They had really been taking care of business all day. Jameis wasn't great. And the Bucs say, you know what? Screw it. We're going back to Fitzmagic. Do we see Fitzmagic starting this week? I feel like we probably will. Like, the Jameis experiment is probably done. I think Tampa's going to be looking for a quarterback this offseason. Jameis will probably be back for another year to compete with whoever is in there next year. Maybe Fitzpatrick will be back as well. I think that would be smart to draft a guy and bring those two guys back and just have a huge competition in that quarterback room. But defensively, this team stinks. They're not going to win a lot of games, but they are entertaining. They got a lot of playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. And then 24, the New York Jets. We got the bad Jets this week. This has been a very inconsistent team this year. They've had some impressive wins. They've had some embarrassing losses. It's a team that turns the ball over a lot. That's kind of Sam Darnold's nature. He needs to improve upon that. Defensively, they need some more pieces. They have some really good players on that side of the ball. It's a team with a bright future that just needs a little more consistency is all, and definitely more offensive talent. And then 23, the Denver Broncos. Now, they played really well against the Chiefs. Eventually, just the Chiefs' machine of an offense took over in the end, but this is a very competitive team. I thought about moving them up, but I really do feel like 23 is a good spot for this team. They're certainly above average defensively, but offensively, you just don't know what you're getting drive to drive. Case Keenum's been, fine. They've got good receivers, and the run game has been excellent this year. Outside of the Rams, this might be the best running game in the NFL right now with Phillip Lindsay, who's just, Deion Lewis-esque, except maybe more explosive. So that's been a lot of fun. To see the local Colorado guy playing well for Denver. But outside of that, it's just a lot of inconsistency on offense. A team that's going to have a lot of close games in the fourth quarter. It's just kind of hard to trust them right now. And then speaking of inconsistent offense, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're going to continue to fall here. I thought they continue to look like we've kind of gotten used to them the last few weeks. Just really bad on offense, putting a lot of pressure on that defense. Against Carson Wentz and the Eagles, they couldn't hold up. I've hammered the Jags leading back to the summer for this Blake Bortles situation, so we'll just move on. But with the 21st team here, the Indianapolis Colts getting a +3, things not looking good for those Jags as they are now the lowest ranked team in that AFC South. But the Colts, a big win on the road. Now, they are 3-5. They are 2 games behind the Houston Texans, but they are getting healthy. This team had a crazy just run of terrible injuries to start the year, but they've got T.Y. Hilton back. Costanzo's back in there playing now. The offensive line's playing much better. Andrew Luck looks to be virtually close to 100% at this point, whereas to start the year I was unsure. So I'm not writing the Colts off by any means, and they've played really tough against a bunch of good teams this year. I think there's a chance they are actually better than the Texans right now, even though they're 2 games back. So that's going to be really interesting to see that play out along with my 20th ranked team, the Tennessee Titans. And these teams have been in this 22 to 15 range all year, and they've flipped a little bit, but we knew this was going to be a really tightly contested division. I was a little lower on this division than most people, obviously, with my opinions on the Jags heading into the year. But the Titans, unlike the Colts and the Texans, who are kind of polarizing, like the Colts offense can be one of the best offenses any week. the Texans defense and what Deshaun Watson, these teams have some inconsistencies, but those teams' ceilings are pretty high. Whereas the Titans, they are the most middling team, I think, in the league. They are not elite at, anything, but they're really not below average at anything either. They've got a solid offensive line. They can run the ball a little bit. Mariota's not the worst quarterback in the NFL. And then defensively, they don't really have any superstars outside of Jarrell Casey, and they don't really have any true holes on that defense, but they also don't have, this elite playmaking defense. So they're going to hang around here. I think they're going to finish about 8-8. And in the AFC South, that could do it. We don't know if the Texans are legit. We'll talk about them in a minute. And the Colts have been the Colts for the last few years. So the AFC South's just a mess right now. It's going to be really fun to see this play out as we're now at the midpoint in this season. So let's move on outside of the AFC South for now. The Chicago Bears at 19. Now they're going to go down a spot despite picking up the win. This is really just about the teams around them impressing this week. I think the Bears are who we thought they were, even without Khalil Mack. They're solid defensively. Obviously, with Khalil Mack, they got a much higher ceiling. And then offensively, they have some good playmakers on that side of the ball. They were out Allen Robinson this week as well. So it was a big statement win, I guess, even though I'm dropping them in the power rankings. To see them pull this game out. The Jets played really poorly in this game, but Trubisky with his feet making enough plays, Tariq Cohen, the Bears are fine. I think this is a good spot for them. And then the Cowboys are going to drop a spot. Again, just the teams around them moving up. Cowboys on a bye this week. I am buying into them with the Amari Cooper trade. I'm a little higher on that trade than the public opinion. Yeah, they paid a lot for him, but that's a huge need for them. Defensively, the Cowboys have been very underrated this year. I think the Cowboys are going to have a good run here in the second half, and I think come Week 16, Week 17, they're going to have some important games to get into the NFC East playoff conversation. And then number 17, the Detroit Lions. A really dull performance against the Seahawks this week. Just, the biggest problem with the Lions, and I've been saying this the whole year, is their pass rush. I love Darius Slay. It's not the worst defense in the NFL, but they might have, behind Tampa Bay and Oakland, the worst pass rush in the NFL, or ahead of those teams, rather. They traded for Damon Harrison. That's great. He's a run-defending nose tackle. He's not a pass rusher. That's a non-factor in terms of the pass rush. Deshaun Hand has been their best pass rusher by far, and he's a rookie growing into a new body after he gained 20 pounds and moved on the interior. And then you've got, Ezekiel Ansah, and he's not healthy. So it's just a bad pass rush, and that's why I picked the Seahawks this week, because they play well against teams that don't rush the passer, because that's their weak link. And obviously, I put a lot of weight in the ability to get after the quarterback. Offensively, Detroit's fine. Stafford just continues to kind of be a two-half player again this week, kind of the old Stafford where he starts slow, gets some things going later in the game, but may or may not be enough. So I think we got a pretty strong hold on who Detroit is as a football team this year. And then 16, we are going to have those Seahawks moving up 4 spots this week. Took a lot of flack in the preseason for saying that the Seahawks are going to be a sleeper team this year. We saw a lot of rankings with the Seahawks in the 20s this year. I was kind of in on them. I think the defense has been underrated all year. Obviously, losing Earl Thomas didn't help, but they're getting a big spark from these safeties. Bradley McDougald, Tedrick Thompson have been playing excellent. And Russell Wilson's still Russell Wilson, and he's got some receivers like David Moore stepping up as Doug Baldwin's not really 100%. And they're getting back to running the ball. So the Seahawks, they have an identity. They have a great coach in Pete Carroll. They have a great quarterback in Russell Wilson. Yes, they have holes, but I promise you, these NFL teams, when it's the week that they got to play the Seahawks, they're gearing up to play these guys. You still got to bring it to beat these guys, and Detroit did not bring it this week. And then 15, the Atlanta Falcons staying put. I think they're going to continue to fall this year as they prove that they can't really go on the road and win. But, they really have shown some impressive things at home the last few weeks. I think they're still a really explosive offense. Obviously, the defense is not any good, but they're just kind of staying put here. And then back to the AFC South as the Houston Texans are going to be the biggest risers of the week, really coming on hot. And the biggest reason I'm comfortable moving them up so high is Deshaun Watson looks much more like the Deshaun Watson we got so into watching last year. And to start the year, coming off the ACL, he did not look good. He was hesitant, didn't have a ton of zip on the ball, was a little iffy running the ball as well, but he looks much closer to healthy at this point, and the defense is playing well. They got some holes defensively, but it starts with J.J. Watt and Clowney up front, which is a pretty good starting point. And then obviously DeAndre Hopkins has been just remarkable. So it's a top-heavy roster, but those superstars really leading the way right now for Houston. Definitely in control right now in the AFC South, though I do think the Colts could sneak up on some teams if they continue to get hot and healthy. And then 13, the Washington Redskins staying put here. A win against New York, whatever. I really like this Skins defense. They're going to turn the ball over. They're not a perfect defense, but they're very physical. And then offensively, they run the ball and try to take care of the football. They're not very explosive offensively, but they get the job done. Just a way more mentally tough, better coached, more physical at the point of attack than the Giants. They were not going to lose this game. And then number 12, the Cincinnati Bengals. I thought they were going to take care of business pretty comfortably against the Bucs. They did until Fitzmagic came striking back. Not much I can really say about the Bengals that hasn't already been said. I think they're a very much above average team, just probably not in my picture for the Super Bowl, but probably an AFC playoff team. And then the Ravens are going to drop a spot. I still don't understand why they were favorites in Carolina. I thought that was a terrible matchup for the Ravens, who really rely on running the ball, heavy sets, really just one weapon offensively, and that's John Brown right now. I thought that was a terrible matchup against the Panthers, who, if you're going to beat the Panthers, you're going to take advantage of their secondary. You're not going to run into that brick wall that is their front seven and come out and have a good week offensively. So, the Ravens are just so limited offensively that I don't feel very confident in them any week. Defensively, they're fine, but like I keep saying, it is an offensive league, and when you're a one-dimensional offense, it's just not a good week-to-week situation for you. But the Ravens are fine. They're a well-coached, good defensive team. And then the Panthers are going to move up a spot here at number 10. So cracking the top 10 for the first time for Carolina. This was definitely their most impressive win, I think, on the season. The Eagles game was a big win for sure, but in terms of being an impressive football team that week, I didn't walk away super impressed. They basically just snuck away with it at the end of the game after being kind of dominated all game, frankly. So that's not a reliable way to win. But this was a great week for them. Cam Newton, again, making enough plays. The defense is very solid. We knew this. So I think they're a solid team. I just, in a head-to-head matchup against the rest of the teams above them, I'm taking the other guys. I'm sorry. Panthers fans have been really disappointed in my rankings. I'm sorry. I'm not a guy that focuses on record. I look at matchups and film. You want record to play a huge factor in your power rankings? Just look at the standings. So then number 9, the Green Bay Packers. And I got a lot of comments this week on Twitter oh, looks like you were right about the Packers, as they were up against the Rams, basically the entire game. And I'm sitting there let's pump the brakes. This has not been a very mentally tough team all year. Sure enough, the defense falls apart in the third quarter. This has been a team that has been able to play a complete game of defense. They played 3 really good quarters of defense in this one. Jaire Alexander was just incredible in this game. That's going to be a big boost for the Packers, and they rushed the passer a lot better than I thought they would in this game. But I've got worries offensively. Aaron Rodgers has been really hesitant this year. He's been pretty solid, and I don't know if he doesn't trust his receivers or what's going on there, but just the consistency's not there for this Green Bay team. And they're a lot like my next team, the Eagles, in that they have a lot of potential. They just haven't been able to put it all together this year. So a lot of people think I've been overrating the Packers this year. I think they proved this week that they are a top 10 team and they can play with anybody. They just got to improve the mental toughness. If Ty Montgomery doesn't fumble the kick return, I think most people thought Rodgers was going to go down and get a field goal there. How many times have we seen that? So they got to get some things in check, but I think they are still a top 10 team. And I'm sure a lot of you are actually surprised I'm not raising the Packers this week. So then the Eagles are going to come in 8th. A good win to go into London and beat the Jags, who, I'm not very high on the Jags, but it's not like they're an easy team to beat. You still got to bring it to score against that defense. The Eagles are hanging around. They're still NFC East favorites. They should be in the playoffs, and at that point, anything could happen. They're not very healthy right now. They've lost Derek Barnett now. to a pass rush that has not been nearly what it was last year. The offensive line still continues to play at a pretty low level. So they're not the team they were last year. That's much is very clear, but they're still a very solid team. And then the other Pennsylvania team, the Steelers, coming out with the win against the Browns. Good for you. You should beat the Browns at home. Was still a sloppy game for the Steelers. They're not a mentally tough football team at all. Some dumb turnovers in this game. Like, to not return the ball on a safety punt? Are you freaking kidding me? How does that happen? You are an NFL team. All 11 players on the return team just let the ball go and the Browns recovered it. Like, oh my God, it's so excruciatingly painful for the Steelers team to see them virtually week after week just shoot themselves in the foot. This team could be so good. And I don't know if it's coaching or a curse or what's going on, but they're almost like the new Chargers at this point with the way the Chargers have kind of figured some things out. And then number 6, the Minnesota Vikings, was not a good night for them. The turnovers really hurt them. I thought they actually played pretty well other than the 2 turnovers that the Saints really capitalized on. I think they got 14 points off turnovers in this game, and I think it was a 17-point win for the Saints? So, you take those away, it's a pretty huge swing. They're also dealing with a ton of injuries right now, but they're not long-term. They should be getting Xavier Rhodes back. They got to play Detroit this week. It's kind of panic week for the Vikes. I think they're going to take care of Detroit pretty handily in a game at home that they know they've got to have. But if they lose that game, then we can start to kind of panic for this Vikings team. But I feel like they'll probably take care of business and get on the right track here. They're still the favorites in the NFC North. They're still in control of their own destiny, all that. The last thing I'll say about the Vikings is, I live in Minnesota. A lot of Vikings fans freaking out and blaming the front office for signing Kirk Cousins. If that's your takeaway this year, that Kirk Cousins has been the problem, who has been pressured more than any quarterback in the NFL, and your defense has been just obliterated by injuries. If your takeaway is you should have kept Case Keenum for $10 million less, just stop. Kirk Cousins has been great this year. He's not the problem. Anyway, let's move on. The top 5 here, the Chargers. Coming off the bye, I think Joey Bosa is going to be back, and man, I am excited to watch this Chargers team with Joey Bosa. If, we saw what Khalil Mack did for the Bears, I don't think Joey Bosa is Khalil Mack, but I don't think he's that far behind him. If you spark this Chargers defense that's already been pretty good the last few weeks, paired with what's been, in my opinion, outside of the top 3 teams, the most efficient offense in the NFL, they run the ball as good as anyone. And Philip Rivers has been lights out. I think this team has a very good chance to emerge as the best football team in the AFC as soon as 2 weeks from now. I really think that highly of this roster. Now, they don't have a home field advantage and it hurts them. They still have this lingering feeling that they're cursed. There's weird things about the Chargers, but their roster is just ridiculous. And then you got the Patriots here at number 4, who are the opposite of the Chargers in that they don't have a very talented roster at all. But from an organization standpoint, from a culture and mental toughness standpoint, they are just, almost flawless. They did not play well in Buffalo, yet they walk away with a 20-point victory. That's who the Patriots are. They're just going to keep coming. They know who they are. They know what they do well. It's just more of the same for New England. And number 3, the New Orleans Saints, a big-time win to go into Minnesota. This was a pick'em game. This team has not lost since a Week 1 hiccup game against the Bucs. They're playing better defensively week after week. Now, they got a little fortunate with some turnovers in this one. If they played that game again, I think it's going to be much more competitive, especially if Minnesota was healthy. But this was my NFC Super Bowl pick, and they are on a good path right now. And then we've got the Chiefs at number 2. Not much else to really say about them. They've really been the same team for this entire season. Insanely explosive on offense. The playmakers they have, it's just not fair. Patrick Mahomes continued to do his thing. Did have a few hiccups in this game against Denver, by the way, but, did enough. And then the Rams at number 1, who just continue to find ways to win. The one thing I will say about them, Jared Goff looked incredibly human for the first half of this game. He was basically a non-factor. This entire offense was. They were getting shut out until Johnny Hecker had a ridiculous punt that set up a safety and kind of ignited this team. And then Goff really came on in the third quarter where he was just incredible. He couldn't miss. So he's got to find a way to be that guy more consistently. He still doesn't handle a rush very well. The Packers had 20 hurries in this game, and it clearly got to Jared Goff. And then defensively for the Rams, you've got a lot of questions about this team. But when your offense is so explosive, you get some big plays from Aaron Donald in the fourth quarter. That's usually going to be enough. But this team almost lost it in the end. So I do have some questions. They are still the best team in football, but I don't think it's like by a landslide or anything. I think the last month this team has returned to earth a little bit and has looked beatable. Just kind of playing devil's advocate for the people that might think the Rams are untouchable this year. Ndamukong Suh, in my opinion, has been kind of a non-factor now for about 3 or 4 weeks as well. So that's going to do it. We're at the halfway point. Guys, please hit that like button if you enjoy these rankings. Looking forward to hearing from you guys in the comments. Cheers as always. We'll see you next time.